I suppose the most fascinating question in the whole world is, who am I?
Who am I? Not who you are, who am I?
Our parents told us who we were. Our schools told us who we were. The culture told us who we were. If you just ask the question, who am I? Every answer you give is really a lie.
Who am I? Is not a question that you ask somebody. It's a question that you ask yourself.
Who am I? A question that for thousands of years, mystics, philosophers, ordinary people have asked. Most of us assume we already know the answer. We think we know why we do what we do, why we fear certain things, why we choose certain partners, why some situations make us anxious and others don't. But what if much of what you call you was built long before you were aware it was happening? What if your mind is more like a structure built brick by brick, moment to moment, throughout your life, with some experiences creating and strengthening positive pathways and others quietly hiding, disrupting your journey through this life? In this video, I'll show you a framework for understanding how the mind is built, how trauma and positive experiences shape who you become, how those patterns can remain hidden for decades, and how you can begin consciously rebuilding the structure so it aligns more closely with who you truly are. The truth of the mind is that it helps enable this human experience, and without it, you wouldn't be able to function in this bubble of reality we find ourselves in. And by bubble of reality, I mean everything you experience, both internal and external. Mind's job is to accumulate experiences and build a self who survives, makes sense of the raw sensory information, all the colors, shapes, sounds, smells, etc. It learns a language which helps it to deeper create meaning and catalog everything in reality so we can have an organized human experience. A key role of the mind is to attach us to life, to create links to the rest of reality, to hide parts of itself from itself, using thought patterns that go unnoticed in day-to-day life so it cannot unhook itself from this reality. Mind keeps us safe in this reality from real and imagined dangers. It learns things are hot, for example, and we remember to stay away from hot things in future so we don't get burnt. As imagination develops, the human mind will naturally create defenses to situations that occur in reality. For example, a lack in social connection may lead to attachments to inanimate objects or TV personalities, creating more of a connection than is actually there to avoid that sense of loneliness. We see this a lot in our society, people creating regular attachments to the people they watch regularly on YouTube or Twitch, for example. It gives them a real sense of connection. Understanding and mastering the mind has been recognized in humans for thousands of years. In the Bhagavad Gita, verse 6.6, it says, "For those who have conquered the mind, it is their friend. For those who have failed to do so, the mind works like an enemy." A child's mind, left to build on its own, will keep us safe at the expense of alignment with truth and being our authentic selves. I'm certain you've experienced situations where if your friend said some of the things your mind said to you, they'd no longer be your friend. So this leads to humans having the task of understanding the mind as they grow so they can tame it and call it their friend. Mind is like Legos. We build it brick by brick, moment to moment. The structure is mostly built with neutral color bricks, but every now and then a red brick will be placed. A red brick is representative of a traumatic incident and a defining moment in our lives. Yellow bricks are created, which are defining moments that shape us positively. Each time an important brick is laid, red or yellow, from that moment it is laid, it can ripple through the rest of our through the rest of the thought structure moving forward, and also throughout our lives. The study of human development focuses on stages of life, where the likes of Carl Jung, Jean Piaget, Erik Erikson, and many others have described the building of the structure through different models and using specific developmental tasks and crises that can cause the red or yellow bricks to be laid. For example, Erikson uses trust versus mistrust at ages 0 to 2. If when you were a child, you were left in your cot, let's say you had a single mother who had to leave you crying while she made food and did household chores, for example, it was more likely you develop mistrust, leading later in life to fear that people will leave you. This would then lead to you having an anxious attachment style and potentially being clingy in relationships, for example. So we can see that life is built brick by brick, and developmental stages are built one on top of another as you age. If we map it, we can see that intensely charged moments in early stages of life impact us exponentially more, as they have a larger impact throughout the course of our life. Someone that develops mistrust early in life can have that developmental crisis ripple through their whole lives. The building layers of life are like a pyramid, the foundational layers heavily impacting the structure as it is built over time, ultimately leading to a peak, which is the moment you experience right now, that all your previous moments have led to. If we had been actively following you or any one of us up until this point, from the circumstances of you entering the world, plus every moment of your up-to-date conditioning, where the red and yellow bricks formed and the impacts that rippled up to this moment, we'd be able to predict with reasonable accuracy what you would do next. Now, obviously, there are factors that you have trillions of cells in your body, all making their own movements, a brain full of billions of neurons that are chopping and changing constantly. So we'd need a lot of information to 100% accurately know your movements moment to moment. But we can see that because of how your mind is built, you can fairly accurately see how and why a person does what they do. Later, this understanding will be helpful when we cover videos on judgment of self and others, how to forgive anyone, why good and bad doesn't exist anywhere but your mind, etc. The most important part of the mind's role in your life, though, is preservation of the experience, which means the mind itself must survive in order to keep you linked to reality. This is important to realize as we can start to understand why the red and yellow brick moments are so important. Often the mind will create a thought pattern to protect us from one thing, while simultaneously creating suffering by avoiding the truth it is protecting us from. For example, Erikson in his model describes a child who receives autonomy versus a child that receives shame and doubt patterns, like when they are learning, for example. A child may try to learn something new, like putting shapes in a box, with that has the cut shape holes, and then you put in like the triangle and the circle. But the parent gets easily frustrated with the child, pressures them to do it quickly, and ultimately does it for them. If this is a pattern in the child's life, the child then may go to school and be hesitant to try new things because they doubt themselves, and they'll have a fear of being shamed. That child's mind would project onto others that they will be shamed if they make a mistake or take too long. The child would avoid trying new things, which had kept it safe at home, but now in school, if you don't try new things, now the child has a new problem that arises. The parent gets informed that the child isn't trying new things, perhaps doesn't socialize as well, which makes total sense given what we know about the child's upbringing. But now the child's mind needs to come up with a new way to get through the new experience safely. So they force themselves to try new things, which goes against the original thought pattern, which is now buried to the child and unknown to everyone externally. Another child develops anxiety, even if they do try new things, because the existing thought structure still exists that wants to avoid doing new things and fears being shamed. So we can see how in future, this child, as they keep solving new experiences with their mind, how they can easily create a maze that they completely lose themselves in. And this is totally acceptable to the mind, as it creates lots of linkages to life throughout that process, albeit ones that create lots of suffering because the truth of reality in each moment doesn't align with who they really are and all these thoughts that they've built up. If many of these developmental crises go the way of being out of alignment with the truth of reality, the person can build a web of thought structures that lead them to getting trapped in their own mind, unable to move through the world without immense difficulty, as everything they come up against gets filtered through the lens of this incredibly complex thought structure that's trying to keep us safe. When we explain reality through this complex web of biases, perspectives, safety mechanisms, avoidance of truth, etc., it's like we are doing a word search with 1,000,000 letters and glasses with lenses that are out of alignment with our eyes. It's all just a confusing blur, and we move through the truth of reality trying to make sense of what arises moment to moment, not based on pure facts, but based on funneling the experience first through this complex web that we've created. No wonder there are so many different perspectives, why there are so many lost humans doing such unloving things in the name of love, fighting wars, ignoring the suffering of others, building social media channels and networks that promote judging and shaming of others, etc. We can see how a good upbringing, good teachers, and social circle can affect a person when from a young age, if the thought structure is made up of mostly yellow positive bricks. Obviously, most people will have a range of red and yellow, but it can help us understand ourselves. People who caused us suffering, people who in the present are frustrating to deal with, and etc., etc. Ultimately, we'll discover, if we explore our own minds deep enough, that the development of mind is largely out of the control of a person, and that those that seek to dissolve and understand their minds are given that path by the grace of the universal flow. My wish for you is that when you watch this video, you build a yellow block that starts to build a habit of exploring yourself. This path given to you by luck or grace, however you want to view it, will lead to dissolving aspects of the mind so you can understand yourself deeper and deeper and see the truth of reality clearer and clearer. Anything you build in your mind from this point forward, you hopefully can now see that it needs to be carefully considered and that it may create rippling effects on how you flow through life or to the extent you find blockages arising. Let's explore how to consciously remove red bricks and add yellow bricks. This is a long process. At the age of 30, I committed my life to exploring this process. I'm now 10 years into that journey almost. And 6 years, I would say more so as a hobby, 4 years very committed. Once I kind of stopped being confused about what I was looking for and got a proper scent for the path, I would say, that sort of led me to uncovering more about the self and reality. Once I sort of picked up that scent, I quit my job and invested heavily in the path. And over that time have come to understand how to remove and add the bricks very carefully. Ultimately, reality needs to grace you with some external circumstances or multiple circumstances that lead you down a path of putting in place what will now become known as a green brick. I love green bricks. Green bricks being a brick that not only is a poignant, life-changing moment that will affect how your life moves forward from this point, but also works to move backwards, rippling through the red bricks and changing them into green. The mind starts to think it is gaining, adding layers, when in actual fact the green bricks are gaining knowledge of the red, which allows the mind's patterns to be seen, which not only gains that knowledge, laying a green brick on top of the red and building a new pathway, which is now positive, but simultaneously starts moving down the path of that red brick that it's been laid on top of and starts dissolving the red, turning that sort of pathway into green. It doesn't remove the brick. We can still see what occurred and why, but no longer do we allow it to cause unwanted movement in a negative direction in future moments. One thing about green bricks that I personally have found is that they will likely lead to what's commonly known as ego backlash. Difficult internal feelings might arise, which may feel overwhelming. If you have or have had addictions, these can resurface here, leading to one step forward, two step back. So we need to be very careful exploring the mind and definitely pace ourselves. Even if you become extremely excited and passionate about exploring the mind, we need to listen to the body and be aware of our behaviors and how we are acting to ensure we remain operational to whatever our life requirements may be at the time. As well as this, I recommend having multiple support channels. A friend or partner that you can open up to on even a surface level, maybe that can listen well and offer some emotional support. A good counselor or therapist that you can open up to on the deep wounds you aren't ready to share with that friend or family member. A good counselor generally meaning one who has done a lot of work, who can be a sounding board for you to reflect back what you say so you can hear it, who can offer insights which can make the heaviness of what you are experiencing feel slightly lighter. I also recommend an effective journaling process. This doesn't mean you have to write a journal every single day, like a journal entry, every single day. For example, when I write notes throughout the week, and when I have time, and I'm feeling like I'm in a good place mentally and physically, I'll spend an hour or two processing my thoughts and feelings that I've sort of backed up over the last week or two. I might then go and spend half an hour walking, or sit quietly in meditation, call a friend, or have some cuddles with my partner, whatever it is I need, You can modify what I'm saying as well to kind of suit how you individually operate and what feels good and actually works for you. I know someone that rarely meditates, for example, but they sit in front of a red light panel once a day or whatever, and either repeat a mantra or reflect on their highest vision for their life, and that is their practice to stay grounded. So there's lots of different ways that you can do this, and I don't necessarily think that there's one right way in that process. One important note I want to make on the green bricks before I end this section is that they cannot be stopped. I want to reiterate that again because I think it's very important. The green bricks, seeing those past traumas or thought structures that were put in place to protect us from whatever it was that was too intense to accept in that moment, or needed a thought pattern to explain away the pain. Once they are seen, they cannot be unseen, and therefore feeling and exploring the path of that red brick layer, in most circumstances you cannot essentially re-hide that from your conscious mind, as you did earlier when you were a child, for example, to stay protected, which is another reason why it's so important to have existing support networks when you are doing this type of exploration. Once these green bricks take hold in the mind, they tend to ripple up and down, exposing the red, the beliefs, fears, traumas, revealing how little you know, which can lead to feeling unsafe and stuff like that. At the same time, it can add another element to your life. Greens tend to create their own thought structure of knowledge and wisdom, as well as benefiting the existing yellow bricks or thought patterns. Seeing how you were shamed and how you doubted yourself as a young child can now lead to you seeing how you doubt yourself in your job, for example. And now you'll be able to relax slightly more when you're at work. You'll be able to appreciate your level of work more, or your qualities as a partner, so that when you go home, you can be a better partner, rather than judging yourself, for not being good enough or something like that. Of course, gaining knowledge like this can also affect things in a perceived negative way. I say perceived because I believe even the negatives are better to experience, even if they lead to short-term suffering, such as seeing that a partner is reinforcing a shame loop you've had since you were a child, and then going through the pain of breaking up with that person, or seeing that you've been projecting that shame cycle onto your child, for example. That would be extremely painful, but also, in my opinion, better to know now and start that process of raising your consciousness, becoming clearer, which generally leads to more insight, being a better human for your current or future self, friends, partner, and family. There is one other aspect I'd like to touch on briefly. However, it requires much more core video content before we can fully explore it and explain it. Gold bricks are moments where real truth is seen. Getting an understanding of what the thought structure actually is, how the self was created, is an insight that ripples through all of your bricks. All thoughts, beliefs, perspectives, understandings are tinted with a dash of gold if you can uncover one of these. Only one brick is laid when a gold brick is found, because nothing more needs to be said, but everything is tinted past and future with this deep-seated truth being seen. There are a few gold bricks spoken about in life. I like to believe if enough are found, the tint on all bricks are turned into one structure of gold, oneness essentially. And it's a topic that I'll explore in future, and I'll explore more of what these gold bricks are in future videos. But I just wanted to give a brief introduction on them here, and I think it's important to mention in the context of a video on the mind, and how these sort of blocks and bricks ultimately affect the mind. The mind has many built-in traps on which I'll do a video on in the future. If you'd like an initial look, journal on these. How can you be sure you know that something you think is true is actually true? Thinking you know what another person thinks about you, like your partner, for example. The mind filling in gaps to make sense of two pieces of information is something common that affects us. Okay, let's go through some commonly asked questions on the topic of mind. We'll start with, what does understanding the mind actually do for me? It seems like a lot of effort, and it is. Honestly, understanding the mind is kind of best committed to, in my opinion, with a lifelong journey of exploration, seeing it in that sort of context. That way you can start and stop, invest more time when you have more free time and less when you need to focus on more worldly things. Some people may peel away all the layers of the mind, kind of like an onion. Others may only peel a few, but like a snowball rolling down a hill, the more you progress in your exploration, the clearer life will look. And in turn, even if life doesn't get any easier, like externally, it will be easier internally because you'll see clearer. Now, that's the thing with this. It affects every part of your life. If you uncover and process a few layers of the mind, it may give you less anxiety, which makes working to deadlines easier, which will give you more calmness at work. That may flow into home life, and your family may experience a slightly improved version of you. So you can see how important it can be and how quickly it can start to stack and sort of ripple throughout all different areas of your life. Working on this even as a hobby a few times a week, in my opinion, can drastically change your life, and has done for mine. Next question, how do I know if a belief is true or just conditioning? My perspective on this is, it's not whether it's true or not. It's about whether it moves you towards your vision or away from it. Truth is relative in almost every case. There are a few truths I found in life, a few of those gold nuggets, gold bricks, but those are for another video. I mean, here you just need to know that 99.9% of life is perspective, which is why you can believe something and someone sitting next to you can believe something completely different. And you can both logic it to one another, even if their perspective seems ridiculous. This can really help your relationships when you recognize just how little you actually know, and how once you start to explore other people's perspectives, you can start to understand how people get to a certain mindset. What is better to ask are questions like, is this helping me to move towards my highest vision of my life? Does this make me happy or give positive vibes, or is it giving me down vibes, making me sad? How does my gut feel about this decision? I'll do a video at some stage on how thought structures, minds, are basically all just perspective, conditioning games. And you shouldn't take yourself or your attachments too seriously if you want to move freely through the world. I feel like people think freedom is doing whatever you want. To me, freedom is dissolving the mind's attachments and building a life that aligns with the unfolding nature of your bubble of experience. The more in alignment you and that thought structure are with the truth of your experience in this moment, the more free that you will actually feel, because you can move 100% with life and never have to go against it. So essentially, freedom is being free to move with life no matter where it takes you. How much is genetics versus conditioning? Genetics are a part of circumstances of birth and can impact us in small and large ways, I suppose. If we're born 7 feet tall and have good parents who promote autonomy and a healthy lifestyle, we may, through conditioning of people telling us that we'll be good at basketball, gravitate towards that. However, for the majority of people, especially in Western countries where the basic survival needs are generally met, hard work can overcome, for example, a bad parent or an unhealthy lifestyle if the goal is financial freedom or finding a partner. And the way it is overcome is with conditioning over time. So yes, genetics do play a role, but for the majority of people, conditioning will be much, much more influential than genetics. Next question is, why do some people experience bad trauma or red bricks and seem fine, whilst others struggle for years? Again, as in the last question, this is much more a case of conditioning. A person that experiences shame and doubt early in age, if the rest of their friend circle is successful financially, for example, they may fear not being good enough and being ostracized by the group, so they will work extremely hard to be good enough and use that shame as a motivator. This is not the best form of motivation though. I will explore this in a dedicated video in future and explain some better ways to motivate yourself. Another person may make friends with people who are often depressed and struggling to deal with life, or have a partner like this. They might find themselves shaming themselves and turning to addictions to relieve the suffering they find themselves experiencing, such as drugs, alcohol, food, pornography, etc. I'm going to do a dedicated video on addiction once I've gone through all the core topics as well, once they're all released. Next question is, does this mean I don't have free will? This is a much more complex topic that I don't have time for here, unfortunately, but I will do a video in the future, as this is a core teaching, so it will be coming out sooner rather than later. For now, I'll just say that you experience a universe operating in front of your eyes with physical and societal constructed laws. Inside of you, a universe of hundreds of billions of entities live and operate to keep you functioning. A mind gets built from past and with thoughts on future, but in this now moment, you believe you have free will to do whatever you want. Is thought telling you have free will, is my question, or can you actually do anything you want? I mentioned earlier that freedom is aligning with what unfolds in front of you, but there are a few nuances we need to more deeply discuss to get a full picture of free will as it is commonly thought about in our society. I'll do one more question. if the mind creates the self, who is observing the mind? This is another complex topic that, although I'll have an attempt at making in the future, nothing can truly explain this until you become conscious of this in your own experience, which is extremely difficult without many years of dissolving the mind in meditation, intense journaling practice, or even the use of psychedelic drugs. Many saints and gurus have given this a go to explain. Lots of different language can be used, but ultimately language is thought structure, and thought structure is the barrier to seeing the observer. In Zen, they speak about removing a thorn from the finger with another thorn and ensuring to throw both away. Removing ignorance, which is unconscious mind, with knowledge and wisdom, essentially, is how I see it anyway. Therefore, you gain consciousness. It's an important step in the journey, but ultimately both must be thrown away if one wants to see the observer, because both are essentially part of the thought structure, and both need to go if you want to see the observer, see beyond what thought is, see beyond that thought that's layered over the top of reality, essentially. Last thing I want to say is that the mind hides a lot from us. We think we know reality, but as we've seen here, circumstances of birth, conditioning through traumas, influences out of our control, our society, our friend circles, etc. All these things can ripple through our lives. All these red and yellow bricks get built on top of one another and can be so easily buried and forgotten, even though they have a huge amount of control over our existence. We might feel confused about the feelings or thoughts we have in the moment that arise, but there are reasons for all these, which can be found with deep exploration. Understanding the mind gives us power to move through life and aligning our authentic self with the truth of the movements in front of us. This makes us wise, good listeners, and helps others to see the world slightly more clearly as well. Most of us can't change much of what happens in this world, but adding a green brick that leads to a commitment to understand ourselves and our reality can lead to powerful changes in our lives that can ripple through our past and future thought structure and our interactions with the world, thereby creating an impact on the world as well. But I won't get too deep into the impact that you'll have on the world at this stage. But ultimately think on this, rewatch it, like, share and comment so this video can reach others. Subscribe for more. This is just one piece of a larger puzzle. It is a core video to the framework I'm presenting and putting together on this channel, which once complete will help people navigate their lives, understand and love themselves and others, and work towards their highest vision as their authentic self.